Welcome to making paper strip ornaments. There are three shapes, this sort of oval shape, the circle shape, and then this pendant teardrop shape. These are all constructed using scraps of paper. To make them, you'll need a couple of supplies you already have, a stapler, a ruler, a cutting knife or scissors, in this case I'm using my trusty craft knife, and then the actual paper that you'll be cutting out. Now I've made some of these into strips in advance, and I'm just using scrap paper, so I have pieces left over from marbled paper projects, from craft projects, just whatever I had left over, I went ahead and used those. That's what makes this project so great, is you can use pieces you already have, you can do it with your kids, it doesn't matter if it messes up. This is a great thing for using up what you've had left over, particularly that nice stuff that you want to use but don't really have anything for. You'll need to cut them into strips that are different heights, and we'll get to that a little bit later. A quick note about the scrap strips. I've used my guide in my cutting mat to help me cut them, so each one of these is 1 centimeter wide, with various lengths depending on how long the piece of paper was. You need to make sure that you have multiples of each length, and that each length is a little bit longer than the one that follows it. So you can see here that I've got some of varying lengths, and I'll need to go back and trim them so that actually it creates a sort of stepped up pyramid, if you will, so that each one is just a little bit longer than the one next to it, and I have multiples of the same color. The short blue strip on the left-hand side is the strip that will actually be the sort of foundation of each piece, in that that's the one around which the others are held. So that one is very important. So if you want your ornaments to be a certain size, make sure that that one is no larger than you want them. The first shape we're going to make is this oval shape again, and it consists of 3 strips, the one in the center and the 2 on the outside. It's important, if you have paper like I do here, which only has color on one side, that you pay attention to the way that you've placed it and how it will look in your ornament. With the first ornament, I'm going to use this blue strip in the center, and remember I said that that is the one around which the others will be formed. I will have 2 green strips that go with it, and then 2 strips for the outside. Here are those 2 green strips that are going to go next to my blue strip. You need to make sure that they are the same length, followed then by the 2 strips that will go outside on the very edge of the ornament. They also need to be the same length. This is the basic arrangement that you'll need to create the ornament. Make sure again to pay attention to which side of your paper will be facing out after you've created the ornament for the way you want it to look. If your paper, like mine here, only has one side. The 2 solid color ones are fine because they're the same color on both sides. But I want to make sure that when I create it, that lovely marbled bit is facing out. So you'll stack them like this, and that will give you an idea of how they're going to go together. Want to make sure that all of the ends of the pieces fit together, right? So that they all start in the same place. So once you've got those, go ahead and pinch them. Make sure that the paper is facing the direction you want it to. And then you'll just need to staple all of that together. I promise you it couldn't be any easier. So you go ahead and do the exact same thing on the other side, but first you have to find that centerpiece and then pull down each strip to again match those edges together. You want to give it that shape, but you have to make sure that those edges are the same. So you can hold the 2 and then start inserting the other one in, and again do the same thing on the other side. Sometimes you'll do like I did here and it will slip. You just go ahead and push those things back together and just feed them in, and it helps hold that shape. Then you'll pull down and pinch a little bit further, make sure they're roughly okay, and go ahead and staple that again. You want to make sure that you're not over stapling the edge, obviously, so just go ahead and insert it further into the stapler so you get it as far as you need to. And there, it's simple as that. For the next shape ornament, the teardrop shape, I have 7 strips of paper. You can use as many or as few pieces of paper as you want. 7 happened to be the number of different types that I had. Again, you'll need to be mindful about where your actual facing comes out, depending on what kind of paper you're using. So again, go ahead and make sure that each one of those strips of paper is only a little bit longer than the one that precedes it, and stack them together, making sure that on one end all of the edges line up. Because I'm using the paper that has only one side as well as one that has both sides, I've made sure that actually they're all facing the same way, so that what you see when you look at the teardrop shape is mostly the marbled side rather than the white side. The next step, of course, is to bring all of these different edges then up to the top where you already have the edges aligned, and this will give you that teardrop shape. Now again, you'll just do it one by one, holding them together, and just insert the next strip in the section between your fingers. This is a great way also if you have paper, as mine is, as I've said, that has that only one side on it, because you can see right now that what I'm seeing there is a lot of white rather than the actual marbled side. So I need to go ahead and rearrange these the other direction. There we go. So it's not a big mistake, just didn't look quite the way I wanted it to. So go ahead and again, make sure all of those strips match up. Hold them together, bend them over, and then start inserting them to make that teardrop shape. You can see that one is dual-sided. And then this one, as I go through, you can see that now what I'm actually seeing is more of those colors rather than the white. So go ahead and follow through with all the rest of these strips, adjusting as necessary. If you make a mistake, super easy to fix, don't worry about it. So we're almost done here. We're going to put that last strip in. And I can see that that's a reasonably good shape. That's about as large as I want that to be and about as wide. So I'm going to pinch it a little bit farther down and go ahead and get my stapler and just use that to hold it together as I feed it through without actually stapling. And then go ahead and staple that last moment there. So there we go. There's the teardrop shape. And you can press it down a bit to give it a bit more of a circular feel. You can manipulate them a little bit to get where you want to go with its actual shape. The last shape, of course, is the circle. And this one is managed just a little bit differently than the teardrop shape. Again, it uses all 7 strips of paper. But I want to make sure with this one that actually you're holding everything together and you're not actually pinching it because they're set right next to each other. And I'm setting out all of my strips here, and actually it looks like a few of them are not quite the right length. So I'm going to have to go ahead and trim some of these to make sure that they all fit. The bottom edges are all aligned, but I want to actually bring them into a sort of graduated step up because that's what gives you those even circles on the inside. Just go ahead and set them next to each other, make sure they're about right. This is not an exact process. They just need to be roughly about right. So just go ahead and line up those bottom edges and then trim the ones that are a bit too long or not quite long enough, move them farther down in that order. So actually in the end it looks like I'm only going to have 6, not 7, but that's fine. Again, you can have as many or as few as you want. So there we go. Those are all set. Go ahead and put them on top of each other, as we did with the last one, and line up those bottom edges. Once those bottom edges are lined up, you can see that the paper is in the correct direction for what I want. You're just going to need to feed them over and slide them in between your fingers again, but I'm holding these edges about halfway between both fingers, and you're trying to make sure that each edge lines up but doesn't actually overlap with the other end of your strips. So this can be a little bit finicky, but it's not very difficult. So once you go ahead and follow through with all of that, don't worry if they start to slide a little bit, you can just adjust that as you go along. you can get all those in between your fingers. You can see that this is taking the shape that I'm looking for. You want to make sure that all of those don't overlap. They can overlap a little bit, but you want to just make sure that they're touching. So that looks right. That's exactly what I'm looking for. So I'll need to go ahead and get that into my stapler. So I can just adjust it here, make that go in, and then align them so that everything's just as I want it to be. And then go ahead and staple that. And there we go. That's the circular pattern for the ornament. Again, you can just squeeze them just a little bit to adjust it. It looks good. Perfect. And there's the original. So isn't that cool? Look at those. Perfect use for these paper scraps that I had just laying around. Now with these ornaments, you can either just directly put them onto the branch itself if they're big enough, or you can thread a little bit of fishing line, something clear, even your regular bauble hooks to hang them in whatever way works best for you. You don't even have to put them on your tree. You can hang them on your door, you can put them on the wall, you can tie them up with twine string, whatever works for you. But there we are, paper strip ornaments. Here are a few I made last year of different colored paper. You can see I just tied them up with a little bit of that clear fishing line. But this is a great trick, particularly if you need a color scheme for something. The white ones also look great, super easy to make. Practice them with your kids, do them yourself, have your friends over. It's fantastic, quick little thing to use stuff that you already have lying around.